Buenos días, casi
Good morning, almost. Good afternoon to you all, and welcome to these closing remarks of this doctoral seminar, Peace and European Values as a Potential Model for Integration and Progress in a Global World. It has been a 3-day seminar within the framework of the doctoral scholarships for research and mobility dedicated to Sofia Corradi, who received the Charles V European Award given by the Foundation Academy of Yuste. It has been an honor for us to have you all here among us, the Foundation. This has been a unique experience and hopefully for you too. But it won't be me, the one who will do the closing remarks. It will be threefold closure. First, an academic conclusions that will be done by JÜRGEN ELVERT, director of the seminar, who is also Jean Monnet Chair of European History and professor of the University of Cologne, a member of the jury. Professor Corradi will say a few words too, and the closing of the doctoral seminar will be performed by the director of the European Academy of Yuste Foundation, Juan Carlos Moreno, who is also the co-director of this doctoral seminar. Further ado, Jürgen, first of all, thank you for being with us these days, for guiding us, for trusting, always trusting the Foundation. We have many projects for the future, but now we need to talk about this seminar. The floor is yours, Jürgen.
Just leave my manuscript here, please. Muchas gracias, Miguel. Y a todos. Yes. Conclusions. That's what Miguel said. Well, at least what I gathered with my really non-existing Spanish. I think it's pretty difficult after 2.5 days to have clear-cut conclusions at hand already. That's why I personally prefer this rather sloppish English word wrap up to remind us what we've heard. So don't expect any conclusions, just a little sort of tour d'horizon through the last 2.5 days. We are experiencing remarkable times. Old certainties are not certain anymore. Basic principles of European togetherness are being questioned. The European integration project, which has successfully safeguarded peace, stability, security and prosperity in most parts of Europe for more than 6 decades, has become the target of smear and disdain. Political decision makers on the European political stage are alienated by a huge bluster of openly Europhobe statements. Press moguls in Britain have successfully deceived the majority of the British electorate that leaving the European Union would be a good idea, although they did not provide them with feasible alternative options. Having paved the way into the Brexit talks, they now observe how a bunch of obviously unqualified politicians do not even pretend to clear up the large pile of shambles which they have created, but dissipate their energies in further eroding the already eroded stand of the British Prime Minister. In Washington, D.C., a money-grabbing narcissus of low-pitched intelligence has declared the European Union to be irrelevant and NATO to be obsolete. Quite casually, between signing 2 ineffective directives, he openly contested the backbone of not only the European but the global peace framework in total. In Russia and Turkey, 2 power-greedy autocrats are systematically eroding the foundation of 2 formerly fair working democracies and are openly accepting military interventions, if not warfare, as legitimate instruments of power, to consolidate their power in the domestic realm and to extend their external political influence. Into the bargain, 2 right-wing governments of European member states are openly contesting the European value system and ignoring the basic principles of democracy. What a perspective, isn't it? Apparently, the European institutions, especially the European Council, has difficulties in finding adequate answers. Instead of being self-confident and reacting adequately, hardly and clear answer to these and other challenges are given. These days, the European Union is lacking political leadership. We should, however, be careful in blaming certain political policymakers on the European political stage. The excessively loud silence in Brussels has to a large extent to be attributed to one central element of Council work, the policy of consensus. This policy may have worked in former times when the Union was smaller and called herself community. In this day and age, the consensus policy doesn't work any longer. The European Union thus has to be reformed, and each reform should be preceded by self-ascertainment. To think about peace and other European values, and to analyze whether these and other values may be applied as models worldwide, seems, at least to me, to be an adequate aspect of self-ascertainment. Therefore, our conference here in Yuste took place at the right time. 11 papers most certainly are not sufficient for an overall self-ascertainment of the European Union, its values and potentials. However, they suffice identifying certain characteristics, even amenities of the European project. They are also able to locate certain of its deficits. Sofia Corradi, last year's Charles V laureate, has of course received the prize with good reason. More than 40 years ago, she developed a concept which took the most important feature of the integrated Europe into the focus, the European citizen, or to be more precise, the young European citizen. Earlier than others, she acknowledged that the European project can only succeed when it is accepted and supported by the Europeans themselves. In her paper, she once again reminded us that a central prerequisite for the support is the acknowledgement of the European specifics, its unique diversity. For a better understanding of this diversity and its assets, she considers European mobility as mandatory, in her case, mobility of students. This may not necessarily result in better university marks. It definitely will enhance and deepen the social skills and competences of the mobile students. The other 10 papers of our conference can be arranged in 4 groups. That's just a suggestion. We may call them values, legal aspects, internal affairs, and external relations. I would like to group 2 papers under the headline values. Anna Milosevic took the newly established House of European History as an example of how we Europeans can use the historical argument to compose an acquis of European values, which should be used as a template for the development of a common European narrative, which could be used. Among them, democracy, freedom, and peace should be considered as most prominent. However, she also provided examples how historical arguments are actively misused to create new national narratives, usually as exclusive ventures to create new national paradigms. Jairo Marcos Perez took a different approach, as he wanted to discover, to unveil Europe by looking at it from the periphery. For him, today's Europe has to be seen in line with its Roman and Greek past. According to Jairo, its self-perception is linked with the age of expansion and the global arrangement of the world by the European agent, who, again, according to Jairo, is white, heterosexual, and rich. Sorry, I couldn't resist just to remind us here. Well, I consider it as a kind of provocation, because I'd like, in your special case, to point out the fact that if the conquistadores had been rich, they would definitely not have become conquistadores. So maybe you can still think about a bit about it. But I like the sort of quintessence you gave us. Legal aspects have been handled by Bettina Steible. Sorry, I use the German pronunciation. It's so it's really on my tongue, you know. Maria Teresa Acosta Penco, Enrique Hernandez Diaz, and Gina Sebok. Taking the case of international humanitarian law as example, Bettina was able to show how European values have been externalized and transformed into universal values. This primarily applies to peace, security, and international law. She furthermore pointed to the fact that promotion of IHL has to be considered as a subcategory and element of the promotion of European rights. In her paper about Frontex and the European Border and Coast Guard, Maria Teresa Acosta Penco identified a set of crucial security questions, both for the European Union and the migrants. In 2016, under the impact of the growing flow of migrants, the 2004 founded Frontex agency was significantly transformed to meet its new requirements. In answer to critique concerning the neglect of human rights, certain aspects like protection of fundamental rights, imposed solidarity, and further integration have been central aspects of the reform measures. Enrique Hernandez Diaz looked at a completely different topic when he analyzed youth participation in EU law. He was able to show that the meaning of youth and the concept of participation on the European level, or better on the EU level, have to be considered as challenges for EU's legal system. Long educational processes and the impact of unemployment have significantly changed the whole system of underage. As a consequence, the referring laws have to be put to the test. Gina Sebok pointed at another legal problem which is deeply interrelated with earlier and current flows of migration. The legal situation of religious women in Europe, especially those who do not belong to one of the big Christian churches, and whose way of life and public appearance do not match the majority picture. She has identified a variety of different approaches, which usually depend on the church-state relationship in the country under consideration. Her findings are ambivalent, to say the least. There are, at least in some countries under consideration, noticeable efforts to be seen to grant religious freedom to minorities. However, conflicts with a majority society seem to be inevitable, but this is just my perception. Maybe you will find a solution. Internal affairs have been dealt with in the two papers by Edith Rohonchi, I hope I pronounced the name properly, okay, and Maria Pia Di Nonno. In her paper on the role of mobility actions in the internationalization of higher education in European perspective, Edith argued that internationalization has become a strategic element of university management, as it goes hand in hand with significant money flows and creation of jobs. For her, mobility requires cross-border movement and a sojourn of at least one term at a foreign university. The professionalization of mobility management can be taken as proof that student and faculty mobility have to be considered as a successful model. Her special focus was on Erasmus, as the first regional program under its scheme, a mobility strategy has been developed to promote trust, mutual understanding, and peace in Europe. Maria dedicated her paper to the mothers of Europe as defenders of European values. By doing this, she wants to readjust a traditional view on the origins of the European integration project, which is generally considered as a male project. For her, this perception produces a blurred picture of the early stages of European integration. Therefore, she provides a set of women who have also been involved in shaping the European community and union, while she focuses on the biographies and merits of Simone Weil and Sofia Corradi. External relations, better aspects of the relations between Europe and the non-European world, are brought up by Maite Anaís Dongo Soeiro, I hope I pronounced the name properly, and Luigi Gino. Maite informed us about relations between the European Community and Union and the Latin American countries in the early 1990s. By applying a discourse analysis, she looked at agents and interactions. 1987 was the crucial date in the transatlantic relations. A biannual meeting of parliamentarians from both sides was set up, and a large learning process started which brought Latin America back into the minds of Europeans, especially Spanish and Portuguese policymakers, and reminded Latin American politicians of their European roots. The dialogue was designed to foster the process of democratization and reconciliation in Latin America, although the expectations on the far side of the Atlantic did not materialize in toto. Last but not least, Luigi Cino took a look at Tunisia's political transformation between 2011 and 2016 and the role of the European Union in this process in the political, economic, and social spheres. Once again, the EU wanted to promote democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in Tunisia by setting up a set of programs especially designed to meet the Tunisian specifics. According to Luigi, these programs had been executed relatively successfully, as they were in fact able to flank the process of democratization and reconciliation in Tunisia, especially with regard to stabilizing the civil society and the economy. And now, dear colleagues and friends, I'd like to once again especially thank Sofia Corradi for having been here with us for 2.5 days. This is definitely not a matter of course, Sofia, and it's a great honor and privilege. It has been a great honor and privilege for me. Of course, I also would like to thank all scholarship holders who have actually created this very nice and genuine, unique atmosphere here in Yuste and who have given us much food for thought and for discussion as well. And we most certainly will debate on your papers later on. Of course, we do have to say a very special thank you to Jesus, or to Letizia and Jesus, for their tremendous effort to well, not enforce, but to enable communication. You know, me being definitely non-Spanish speaking was pretty easy, and it was the only way to communicate with you all. I'm now speaking as well, the external guy here, you know, the man who has been invited and has been flown in. That's why I'd like to thank Juan Carlos Moreno Pinheiro and Miguel Angel Ramos and all the team of the foundation for their tireless efforts. And for making our stay here in Yuste that pleasant and for feeding us so nicely. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.